All right. Welcome to the Saga, the Clone Saga, the weekly Spider-Man podcast produced by the students of S.H.I.E.L.D. as we try and go forth and read every single arc of the Clone Saga and in chronological order. I'm Mike, and this week we have...
I'm Vincent. We also have Billy.
And then we have a very special guest today.
Hey everybody, this is Captain Logan, Geekvolution. Good to see you. Oh, it looks like we lost Billy. Hopefully he comes back.
Yep. He'll find his way.
Sometimes he's on the campus's main Wi-Fi. So
oh man, every time I've worked with people that are in a dorm room or something, it's about you see them come in and out about 4 times.
Yep. All right, so Captain Logan joining us. We're very proud. Major guest spot for the first time. So I want to, as you introduce yourself, I want to ask you a few questions. What is your history with Spider-Man? And then just in general, but also specifically, do you have any history or connection with the Clone Saga?
Yeah, wow, here I am put on the spot. So I'm Captain Logan. I run Geekvolution on YouTube, been doing that for almost a decade now, and we do lots of Spider-Man content on Geekvolution. This is a thing we've always meant to go back to. We get requests for it constantly, and it's one of those things that sounds like a massive endurance test, so you guys are amazing for even attempting it. This feels like I did a series a few years ago that you guys might know about called Spawn Year. This would feel like doing Spawn Year all over again, I'm sure, and especially considering how much this stuff is influenced by McFarlane, which I'm sure I'll find bits to talk about. But yeah, I was growing up not big into Spider-Man until I was about 12, 13. So it got relatively late to the Spider-Man game, and I got into Spider-Man because of a friend whose house I went to for a birthday party who had a bunch of Spider-Man comics and was introducing me to them. And I've told this story before, but I felt like when I first looked at it, I was looking at a horror comic because Spider-Man was the art at that time, and we're talking right around this period. Like I think Clone Saga was probably the thing going on when I got into Spider-Man, and it was really surreal looking to me. Like he's got these big giant eyes and he's got these impossible poses and he looks super creepy, and I thought it was kind of a horror character. And then as I got into it, I realized that Spider-Man is one of the most lighthearted characters in comics, even though a lot of really horrible things tend to happen to him. And but so that's kind of how I got into Spider-Man. And I bought a lot of Spider-Man comics. I was always more of a collector than a reader. And yeah, story-wise, I was much more into Spider-Man through the 90s animated series, and which of course adapted the Clone Saga in about 15 minutes in the finale. But Clone Saga-wise, I bought a lot of it. I never actually got around to reading much, maybe an issue here or there, and I was a huge fan of Maximum Carnage, which is one of the big things that happens right before this. And so I just kept buying Spider-Man whenever I would find it. And I wasn't buying comics new at all. I bought everything I bought was at like flea markets and things. And so I was telling Mike earlier, I went in to my collection just to see how much of this I had. I read it all online first because I assumed I didn't have all of it. And then I found out that I had all 4 of these issues, and it makes me wonder if I actually have the entire Clone Saga in my collection and I don't even realize it. So I'm gonna have to take an inventory at some point and check. I've got everything logged, but I didn't realize I had that much Clone Saga.
You might. That would be a big feat, though, because you mentioned how it's an endurance test, and it definitely is, because especially this podcast where we're trying to handle anything that's connected. Like my co-hosts are currently mad at me because we're reading some New Warriors issues, which are like so tangentially connected. And so if you have the whole Clone Saga sitting around, that may be a few long boxes.
Yeah, I definitely don't have the New Warriors issues, but I might have at least all the Spider-Man stuff. Wow, you guys are hardcore. You're doing all that stuff? That's crazy.
Yep.
Vince is a mad taskmaster. He's actually holding us captive and forcing us to read all of it.
That's the only way that yeah, it was like me with Spawn. That's the only way it happens.
I still have to say Spawn Year is much more of an endurance test. And I still don't know how you completed all of it.
Me neither. I'm pretty sure I'm an insane person now. Like I don't think I'm Kane crazy, but I think I'm a crazy person now. So just keep that in mind as we go. Thanks for having me here, but I might be insane.
Well, thanks for coming once again, and we're really, really happy.
I'm excited about it. Yeah, you gave me a few possible episodes to be on, and when I elected to jump onto this one, I didn't even realize that this was, spoiler alert, everybody, that this was the place where Ben Reilly is said at the end to be the real Peter Parker. And of course, I knew that happened in this, but I didn't realize that this was the place where that happens. And of course, that's all ostensible. Nobody get excited, but yeah. So I'm excited to be on this one.
Yep. Yeah, this is a pretty major turning point in the grand scheme of things. So getting into the actual stuff,
yeah.
In this episode, we are talking about the 4-issue crossover Trial of Peter Parker. So it's just 4 issues, so thankfully we are spared from Spider-Man Unlimited this episode, which we have been and the publication date on all these issues is July 1995. And so Captain Logan just showed us the first cover for Web of Spider-Man 126, which is a cool JR cover. I think this is my favorite cover of this arc.
Same with me. I really liked this cover.
But the credits inside the covers, we have Todd DeZago, and then I had to look into this. We have Roy Burdine on pencils.
I've never heard of that guy.
Yeah, I hadn't either. So I did some Googling. This is one of 3 Spider-Man issues he did all around this time. He also drew Gravestone, which is a weird Malibu character, but before they got into the Ultraverse where everything was totally connected.
Oh.
He was also the artist for most of the Night Watch series.
Yeah, okay.
Night Watch plays a somewhat prominent role in Maximum Carnage. Sort of. He was an obscure Spider-Man spin-off character from the 90s.
There's been hilarious talk of him getting a movie. He looks just like Spawn. I hope that happens.
Yeah. And then apparently Charles Soule completely retconned Night Watch in his She-Hulk run, which I kind of forgot about. But I believe this writer, I think he went off to do storyboarding or something, which is something that comic artists often do because it's more stable income unless you're a superstar. And the last thing on his Deviant arc currently is a Spider-Man doodle from 2013.
Huh.
So he may actually be MIA. I'm not sure.
That's really interesting. I was wondering who that was. And then, of course, you've got to have Bagley on the Amazing issue on the second part because he's drawing Carnage. So it's like, oh, we got a symbiote there. So we better make sure that Bagley gets that issue.
So Pete is still looking for Kane, trying to clear his own name and get Ben out of prison. And I thought this first part was kind of funny because he's like, where do I find Kane? And then immediately Kane just like jumps out and tries to punch him in the face.
I enjoyed this fight.
Yeah, they fight in like a dance studio, and there's a bunch of like little ballerina girls who are fleeing. And again, I don't know this artist guy, but like many comic artists, he doesn't draw children very well, in my opinion. They just look like shrunken down adults.
Elects to not really draw backgrounds because a lot of this fight is just giant yellow background.
Yeah, and specifically yellow. You get that a lot with Spider-Man in this period for whatever reason. We think he looks great on yellow, and we don't need anything in the background. And that's a thing that I've made fun of Bagley for profusely. And I love Bagley's art, but he does that with backgrounds a lot. And it looks like this guy's taking his cues from Bagley.
Yeah, I thought this issue specifically, there's lots of absent backgrounds, and like the panels are often like smaller than they can be. Like you'll have a page where it's just like it's a solid color background, and then the panels are small, and like there's so much space that could be used. So I was really mixed on the art in this issue, honestly.
Like this page with the floating defense attorney's head.
Yeah, that
like,
was
all blue, and we are really cutting corners here, you guys.
Yeah, and even the rest of the panels specifically on that page, like they could be like a third larger, all of them, just to fill more of the page and get more art.
I will say, though, for sound effects, my last name appears as a sound effect in this issue again. So that's the first time that's happened.
Yeah, I just found that. There it is. There's Spag.
Yep. So keeping a running counter, that's the first time we've had that in a while.
Oh, but that's happened before. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it happened in like some of the very, very first episodes that we did. But I think just kind of this is off on a tangent, but like I think the first time I actually saw it was in the Dan Jurgens's and Lee Weeks's the Superman and Lois and Clark series. That's the first time I saw it, and now every once in a while it'll pop up somewhere.
When somebody gets hit really hard in the face at some point in one of these you guys and it says Logan, you just let me know.
Yep. So meanwhile, Ben's trial is going along, and we get these overly dramatic opening statements by the prosecution and the defense.
And really lengthy and completely pointless, and this could have been 2 issues.
Yeah. And there are other people looking for Kane, including Detective Raven and Stunner.
Stunner! I was not familiar with her.
Yeah, Stunner, and also it's kind of a subplot in this arc where we're beginning to see Stunner, like hints at Stunner's origins or powers, because she starts disappearing randomly.
Oh, does she have teleporting powers or something?
Actually, to my knowledge, I might be off on some of the finer details of this, but to my knowledge, she's a totally normal, like, woman. In fact, she may even be somewhat feeble, but it's something like virtual reality related, where she gets in a machine and then she has this buff avatar that she controls.
Oh God,
that's great.
I don't know if there's like a time limit on it or like a charge that runs out, but so she just, I guess, dissipates sometimes.
If that's true, I bet when you get to it, they play it as a big giant reveal where it's like, that's why she was so exaggerated. It's like, no, this is what women in Marvel looked like right then. That's not an exaggeration.
Yeah, they get to have their cake and eat it too, because they get an excuse.
Well, the best part about, because at the end of this issue, our good friend Judas Traveler shows up and whisks Peter and Kane away to some other dimension, which I guess we find out they take him to Ravencroft. But the very next issue, Stunner's like, people just can't disappear, and then she just immediately disappears.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that. So do you guys just mean that she's suddenly just not around when she, or is there a mystery plate that I'm missing?
Yeah, there's
no, she literally disappears. Like she like fades away and disappears, just like Judas Traveler did with.
Wow, I missed that. Okay, that's hilarious.
Yeah, it happens like 2 moments. It's kind of right after Traveler teleports them, and then it's later when she's fighting Kane, and then like the building falls on her, and Pete tries to save her. So that's teasing towards something.
In the previous,
sorry, go ahead.
In the previous stuff we read with her in it, she would kind of go off and just disappear for a little bit, and I guess this is them trying to explain that. But like, I'm pretty sure in the past they explained it as she felt this weird urge to just destroy things. So I don't know why they're just randomly retconning that.
Oh, you're right. She does just randomly disappear, but seems to do it on purpose. Okay.
Yep.
That's weird.
But yeah, so basically there's a fight, and then Traveler, our favorite Spider-Man villain, shows up.
Hate him so much.
And the tease at the end of this first issue for the next one, like, this couldn't get tastier and more ridiculous, because it teases Spider-Man being put on trial, and Judas Traveler is the judge. We have Kane as the defense attorney, and Carnage is going to be the prosecutor.
Which is hilarious, and I love it.
I just wish it lasted longer, honestly. Like, that issue is what you probably thought you were getting into when this arc starts, because that's what we usually do with a trial of a superhero, right? Where you have the villains as the jury and one of them as the prosecutor, and you get that for one issue, and it's kind of fun, but it kind of it makes the other 3 not as much fun, especially because the actual trial is really dull.
Yeah. I think the legalities of superheroes, especially in the Marvel Universe, is always entertaining. Like every time Spider-Man's brought to trial and gets in an argument with Jameson. And I know Charles Soule, as a lawyer himself, has been focusing a lot on the legal ramifications of superheroes in his Daredevil run recently.
Well, didn't Kingpin just outlaw all superheroes in New York? That was the big thing.
Yeah, I think something like that.
Oh, I'm like 6 months behind on Daredevil. Spoilers, dude. I didn't know that.
Sorry. I mean, I'm not reading the book. I was just like loosely paying attention to it. I'm gonna read it all when it's done.
No, that stuff has been great. All the idea that a superhero should be able to keep his mask on when he's under oath and stuff. He makes a really good case for it. And I gotta say, I want to have historical perspective, but that stuff makes this a lot harder to look at because the legal jargon is so juvenile.
Yeah. So moving into the second part, we're in Amazing Spider-Man 403. As Captain Logan mentioned, we have the usual team of Mark Bagley and A. Mateus writing it. And this cover is pretty great too, because we've got Pete in his costume chained up with Carnage looming over him.
And Shriek, I mean, just as an Maximum Carnage fan, and I know that book is ridiculous, but I still love it. I don't care what anybody says. It harkens back to that stuff. And no, this is my favorite cover of these. I love how he draws Carnage.
I think really the only contender would be, I don't know if you're familiar with some of the stuff Clayton Crane did.
Oh, yeah.
That's another cool take on Carnage. But it's hard to beat the creator. And speaking of Carnage, off the bat, we have this comedy that Billy was probably enjoying, where Carnage yells objection, and then Traveler curbs him for being improper in the court.
Yeah, this entire just situation is hilarious to me because you have Carnage as a prosecutor, which is just completely ridiculous because it's weird because he actually addresses Traveler as a legitimate judge, and it seems kind of out of character for Cletus Cassidy to be like actually respectful to somebody, but it's out of character in literally the best way imaginable. And then you get Carnage calling himself as a witness, which is also hilarious, watching him jump back and forth between behind the podium thing and in front of it.
It reminded me a lot of when Q plays a prosecutor in the Voyager episode Death Wish. He does exactly the same thing, except he calls himself as like Carnage does, but he makes two of himself, and then he talks to himself. But yeah, it was like that. And that's part of why I wished it lasted longer.
Yeah.
I was just having like Always Sunny flashbacks to how ridiculous this is, like whenever they do anything with a courtroom. So that was my connection to it. Just it's so zany and crazy having Carnage be the prosecution.
So, I kept trying to figure out why Carnage felt the need to actually listen to Traveler. Like, was he worried about what would happen to him, or like it's the most sober Carnage has ever been.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of out of character, but also as we've seen, Judas Traveler is just super ambiguously overpowered and can seemingly do absolutely anything.
Yeah, we see a new power this time. He gets to turn really big.
No, he's done that before.
Well, yeah, like not as big as he does here.
The way that's drawn, I couldn't tell if he made if he got big or he made the other guy small. I could not tell.
But yeah, for reference, a few arcs ago, Judas Traveler was able to snap his fingers and explode a New York City street. And he's been able to teleport. At one point, he messed with the space-time continuum. His powers don't make any sense.
Well, he strikes me a lot like the Beyonder, and I wondered if he maybe was that kind of a cosmic entity. But just from the 4 issues we have here, and I haven't read everything you guys have up to this, I wasn't sure if like maybe we knew something about his being cosmically aware or being another being or something, or if it's a complete mystery. But I'm not trusting this material to ever explain it to us.
Yeah, there has been no explanation to date. And
that's great.
I don't think we will get any as we move along.
So you said his getting big or making people small, whichever is going on in that scene. You can't tell me. I don't think it's possible. You said that's a new power. Maybe is his being able to wipe Carnage's memory? Is that new?
No, he's done that before, but it's still completely ridiculous.
That is the Superman 2 kiss right there.
I've said it before, but I just feel like Judas Traveler would just work much better as a Doctor Strange villain.
Oh, sure.
Whereas anyone but Spider-Man.
Yeah, anyone but Spider-Man.
I feel like he would work better if he just didn't exist, but
I mean, that would also be
we'll
true.
go with yours.
So the question being determined in this case is whether Spider-Man causes his villains to exist, or whether they would still exist and just overrun the city without him. Which it's kind of like that's the question that people always say about Batman, and especially people who don't read much Batman, is like, well, Batman just causes the Joker to kill people. And if Batman didn't exist, Poison Ivy wouldn't be running around. So it's kind of a similar question.
Well, that escalation idea is always really interesting, and I'm talking about that constantly. The idea of whether or not superheroes cause more problems than they solve just because of the way that they're challenged by their supervillains. That's a thing that we also ask about with Spider-Man quite a bit. I thought it was weird to suddenly tack it on here. I don't think the rest of this story is really about that.
Yeah. And so then he addresses Kane to get into the deal with the case, and Kane immediately attacks Judas Traveler. There's also a reference to Scryer here real quick, which is kind of a tease for something, but it doesn't matter and is not explained here.
Good to know.
And
last time we saw Scryer, he was carrying off an unconscious Judas Traveler after the whole giant storm thing.
Yeah, the space-time continuum bubble that Spider-Man saved him from. And then, there's that scene where there's contortion, someone's getting big or someone's getting small. And then we go back to the normal trial, and MJ gets called to the stand. And I thought this was cool, where they're doing a background check, and they're like, where was Peter Parker 2 years ago? And she's like, oh, I'm in a bind here. I can't explain it because he was in a coffin by Kraven the Hunter.
Goes back to Kraven's Last Hunt, yeah. I thought that was it was really neat that we called back to that, and that we said when this is in relation to it. But that material is so much better written and so much more sophisticated than this. It's hard to imagine they're even in the same universe.
Well, the weird thing is, of course, especially this specific issue is by Dave Mateus, so it's the same writer too.
Yeah, and he's writing to match these other guys.
And then Kane, back to the crazy trial, Kane gets to cross-examine the witness, and he just tries to burn Carnage's face off, which starts a big fight, and Judas Traveler just kind of lets it happen until he doesn't. And this is our first hint where we see Peter Parker questioning whether there is any good in Kane. And on that note, tune in 30 episodes when we tackle some of Kane's solo stories.
Oh, that sounds exciting.
Yeah, because that book's actually pretty good.
Oh, is it really? Wow.
Yeah, the Scarlet Spider book from not that long ago. It's written by Chris Yost.
Oh, you're going to do that stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so when you say everything, I thought you meant period. Wow, you guys are crazy.
Yeah, I think we have slated as our final episode.
This is Spawn your level, guys. With the sheer number of issues you're gonna review. Yeah.
I think the final episodes are, Vince can correct me, but our final episodes are the first arc of the Ben Reilly stuff that Peter David's doing right now. Is that the end?
Correct. Yep.
Oh man, I tried that. I couldn't get it, and I love Peter David, but one issue I couldn't do it.
We heard it was not good.
It cannot be worse than some of the stuff we've already read, or it can't be worse. It can be as bad, but this stuff I actually don't read any comics outside of this now. Because it's just so bad.
Has this destroyed your love of comics? You just can't even do the medium anymore? You're like, I play video games and I read Clone Saga. That's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to let you know how much this broke Billy, that doll he has.
Did he beat it up?
$25 for it when he went on a comic trip to Harrisburg. And it comes with a switchable costume to the Ben Reilly Spider-Man suit. But the ongoing joke with Billy is that he's fallen in love with a character named Jack. So Captain Logan, you can tell Captain Logan about Jack really quick, Billy.
Okay, so Jack is the best character in all of comic book history, and it's because he is a clone of Peter Parker who wears the clothes of the Jackal, but is a little person. And he is hilarious.
He died a tragic death.
Existed for
He
4
became a
issues.
puddle of goo.
I've never heard of this character.
He
I
had,
have every appearance of him.
Yep, he and
You're a
bought
Jack collector?
I think in total, what was it, 4 issues?
4
There's
issues.
4 issues.
Got them all. I don't know if that counts as a collection, man. That's
It's
How-
not.
Not
Was
very
there-
common.
there's that one issue that cost $15. It's the Jewel.
I think all 4 of them didn't cost $15, which was he made out in the end there. But back to talking about Kane trying to get out of this trial.
Yeah. So then Carnage calls Malcolm McBride, aka Carrion, forward, and then Carnage just reveals to everyone in the room that Peter Parker is Spider-Man.
Uh-huh.
I don't know where he got this information either.
No, I do. That's revealed when Traveler wipes his mind. For some reason, Traveler felt the need to give it to him.
Okay.
Traveler tells him that.
Mm-hmm.
What I don't understand is how nobody else seems to remember it afterwards. Unless the mind wipes everyone, but we only see it in the one. I don't know what's going on there.
I think we're led to believe that he went and wiped the mind of everyone else, but like, why
They don't
would
tell
they
us that.
show us each panel
Did you
of
show
him
us
wiping
the-
everyone's mind?
Yeah, but you could. There are ways to make that clear.
It's true. I also love that when Carnage pulls the mask off, he calls him a menace, and that is what I've been calling him this entire time, because that's exactly what Spider-Man is, and Peter.
Billy is he loves to hate Spider-Man.
Oh, that's great. You've got like a like anti-Spider-Man fan in your.
He's a big Venom fan, in fact.
I'm also a big Venom fan, but I do like Spider-Man. My wife doesn't though. My wife would be right on board with you.
I like your wife.
Thanks. She's pretty cool.
But not only does Carnage know that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, he then goes on to ramble about all of Peter's failures in life, like extensive details about his origin story, all of his friends and family who have died. So like, I think Judas Traveler gave him like a full like 30-minute debrief. Like, this is when this happened.
It was like a roast.
He wrote up
Yeah,
a biography.
With all the random powers he has, you don't know that he didn't just touch Carnage and he magically has all that, like a download dump.
I figured it like, well, what's funnier in your head? Him sitting down talking to Carnage for 30 minutes or him just touching his head?
Well, if the idea is to play this for comedy, then absolutely it should be the former. I like the idea that he takes his time to do that. Yeah, they're just like sitting at a park bench. Okay, and also there was this thing with the Green Goblin, and you probably didn't know this, but that's Norman Osborn.
And then we get a scene of Peter breaking out of the chains and the paralysis, which he was also in, and it's kind of those Superman moment. Not quite as good as a Neil Adams Superman breaking the kryptonite chains, but
Yeah, it also looks kind of bad.
It's not great. That face is not great.
It wasn't great. It was even worse for me when reading it because I was at a softball game, had to cover that, so I was doing my reading while I was there. So the sun was blocking my view, so half of this was really obscured for me. So
Where's all that yellow? I don't know how you look at it.
I will say though, these issues more entertaining than that softball game.
Also,
Yeah, I mean,
the
like-
bottom. You can go.
Oh, sorry, just real quick. Just I mean, it's nuts. This is DeMatteis and Bagley. These guys, are usually great. I mean, Bagley has drawn on some really funny bad Spider-Man comics, but I mean, this is that era where they're kind of just phoning stuff in because they're rushing this. We've got to get 4 out a month. There's no reason this story needs to go between 4 different books. And I always wondered if they were just trying to ape some of the big mega arcs that we had in DC in the early 90s. I don't think Clone Saga is this long if you don't have Death of Superman and then you don't have Nightfall.
yeah, the Clone Saga was definitely inspired by those kinds of things where it's like what's a giant event that we can wrap all these 4 books in for a while. But also the main thing, I mean, that was how they were going to do it. But the whole thing was they were trying to lead up to Amazing Spider-Man 400. That was supposed to be their big climax. What we're currently reading is 403. So it
just kept going.
It's just stretching out.
Well, the best part about it is that all the people that were here originally when it started are gone when it's over.
Yeah, lots of creative turnover as well. But it gets to the point where it's like we get to the climax, but we didn't address anything, so we stretch it out. And then later on, different events within Marvel start happening, so they have to stretch it even further and further because they don't want to completely like overshadow or like cannibalize other events. So Onslaught happens, and they're like, well, we can't finish the Clone Saga during Onslaught, so let's tack on a few other months.
It never ended.
Yeah, I was never totally sure why that just keeps going. I haven't looked into some of that.
Yeah, so Judas Traveler, he calls for the verdict, despite Kane not getting his turn as defense, despite the fact that Traveler has been trying to present this as a very fair case, a very cordial courtroom. And
which makes no sense. It's obviously a hysterical show trial. I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, and then Carrion and Vermin are the only ones that say it's not fair. They're the little guys who've kind of reformed. But
it's important to mention that Vermin is here because of Kraven's Last Hunt.
Yeah, and he's a DeMatteis creation. I mentioned this when he showed up in an earlier episode, but I believe Vermin, his first appearance was actually in DeMatteis' Captain America run.
Right, and that's talked about there too. Yeah.
But then Traveler sentences Peter to death, and he sends all the inmates after him. But then Kane steps in to try and save him, and that changes Traveler's mind. So he snaps his fingers, everyone teleports away, and then he mind wipes them. And like, there was really no point to this like entire trial, honestly.
I was trying to figure out if the plan all along from Traveler was just to try to create a ruse to see what Kane would do. Because the way he talks about it at the end, it's almost like he was hoping that would happen. Like he's a master manipulator that had orchestrated all of this to like he's 5 steps ahead, and he knows that that if he says that Spider-Man's guilty, Kane will do what he did. It doesn't have to be a trial to do that. You can come up with something a lot less overly complicated to do that. But his whole thing is if somebody comes out to put his life on the line for Peter, that tells me more about Peter than Peter himself, which seems kind of like arbitrary morality to me, but whatever.
Yeah, Traveler's overall motivation, or whatever extent he has, is he basically wants to study the nature of evil. That's how he explains it, which doesn't really make any sense. And then I guess inversely, with Peter Parker, he's studying the nature of good.
Yeah.
And so he teleports everyone away, and the last page reveal is Stunner grabs Kane. And so we move into part 3 in Spider-Man number 60.
Well, before we get there, I want to note that Carnage was scribbling different versions of Peter's name into his wall. And
I missed that.
I like to imagine that Traveler didn't bother to erase this, and so Carnage is gonna like wake up and see this and be like, why did I carve these into my wall? And then he'll slowly figure it out, and we'll get a cool.
That was my same thought. Like, I kind of want that to happen.
Yeah.
No, but is it funnier though if Traveler got like some spackle and fixed the wall?
I wish they'd shown that if that's what happened.
Well, the fact if he has spackle powers, this spackle.
Those would be my powers, I guess.
Spackle man.
This third
all the holes in your wall.
This third part, we have some a major tease right on the cover, with Kane revealing his identity. We also have on the cover Peter and Ben both in costume, like fighting him. But
this is not how it happens in the book. That's not how it happens.
Ben doesn't put his costume on this entire story. So
nope.
Also, the most important thing in this cover is that view of Kane's ass. It's just
This would have been a great deal more dramatic, though. Don't you wish this is how it happened?
Yeah.
Where he's like, look, everyone, I look just... No, instead, we get like 6,000 words on a page of a full-page reveal of a character's face who you've been waiting to see who he is for issues and issues. You would never see that now. You would never see that many words on a page of a full-page reveal spread.
If you think that's a lot of words, you should really read the New Warriors stuff, because that was a lot of words.
Well, sure, but I mean, for a reveal page, it's crazy to have anything like that much dialogue.
Yeah. So in this issue, we have the regular...
Sorry, I'm jumping ahead, but that's crazy.
Of Howard Mackie and Tom Lyle. And off the bat, we get a fight between Peter, Kane, and Stunner for several pages. And it doesn't really matter because Stunner disappears.
I just want to note that Peter somehow was able to tell she was still alive by looking at her leg sticking out of rubble, which I don't know about that.
And then I think this is a funny scene where Kane and Pete, they're arguing about, because Pete wants him to reveal his guilt to save Ben Reilly. And Kane is like, I'm stronger than you, even in my weakened state. And our joke has been, not only does Judas Traveler have these ridiculous, overpowered abilities, Kane has also, like, the whole point of the Clone Saga up until this point has been showing Kane as this major threat. He kills Kraven's son. He kills Doc Ock, and so they're really trying to put him up as like this, like Spider-Man's greatest villain.
Make him look strong.
So he pumps himself up and is like, "You can't beat me," and then Pete I guess he just sucker punches him.
Mm-hmm.
I like the sucker punch though.
Yeah. And of course, Kane wakes up right in front of the courthouse, and then they just punch each other through the doors. And the judge...
That's the point. If he's that much more powerful than Peter, how does that work?
Yeah, and then the judge lets them out for... he lets out the court for recess until the Spider-Man situation is resolved.
You guys are fighting. Don't have a hamburger.
That was a funny line, but no one gets the chance to leave the courtroom. I don't know, but the thing is, there's got to be like a solid 5 minutes of Peter and Kane like arguing right outside the room, and so I don't know what everyone was doing.
Well, what I love is the judge is like, "Please remain seated and don't get up." I'm like, "No, you like what?
Run,
run!"
Yeah,
you're knocking crap over.
And then we get our big reveal. Kane reveals he was the first clone that Warren tried to kill.
And he's Two-Face.
Yeah.
Somehow the degeneration process, it has made his face all messed up, but it also has made him stronger than Peter and Ben. Who knows how that makes sense?
And I guess that also gives him the Mark of Cain powers?
Well, let me get to that.
Or is that something else?
No,
he revealed the Mark of Cain powers to us in our chat we have for this.
All right.
So, it's good.
I want to mention first of all that when he reveals himself, he shortens the word degeneration to degen, like it's some hip word, which just made me laugh.
It was a lot of that in the 90s.
Yeah, and so
with anything related to genetic engineering.
So I looked into some more stuff on Kane and that ridiculous suit that we've been making fun of this whole time.
I like this.
Apparently it's actually a life support, which tampers down the clone degeneration process. The Mark of Cain, as Captain Logan wondered, is apparently a super powerful version of Spidey's ability to stick to walls.
What?
And, they only
That's why it's... Wait. Is that why it's webby? Because it's a spidery power? Is that... Okay.
And they only do it like, I think they show it like twice in this story. But you know how he has those crazy visions of MJ?
Yeah.
So apparently Kane's visions are a souped up version of the spider sense.
So wait, so then he can see this future
Yeah.
because he's got a souped up spider sense?
He can see the future, but only when it's involving Mary Jane. Like, I don't think any of his visions have involved anybody else this entire time.
Because it's a destiny thing. Do they ever connect it to the whole web of life and all of that?
I think maybe later when he pops up in like Spider-Verse or in Spider Island and stuff like that.
That's the only way you make that make any sense at all, and I hate that stuff too. But
yeah. So the thing
just
is,
the whole Destiny Web of Life thing. There's stuff in Spider Island I like, but
so the thing is, everything I just said, it is never actually explained in the books, to my knowledge.
what?
No, but I'm not making it up. The editors have publicly explained this, but they just never got around to explaining it on the page.
Wait, so it's never even on the page why the premonitions are there?
No, the Mark of Cain, like all that stuff.
It's all played as a giant mystery.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the best.
Well, the MJ vision, like plot wise, that kind of comes up, but like how he has the visions is not explained.
Because why not?
Well, that's just the best. So explain to me why he's got the massive pecs then. Is that also the life support suit, or does he really have these insanely massive pecs?
Yeah, he's just a souped up version of Spider-Man's physique and powers and everything. And so in their argument, Pete threatens to reveal his own identity to the court and all this clone mess. And Kane doesn't want that. So to stop,
It would take a lot longer than the actual trial, right? I mean, like they would be there for so long.
And so to stop Pete from ruining his life, Kane runs in, beats up the district attorney, and then leaves his Mark of Cain and fingerprints on the table and turns himself in.
So he goes and slams this guy's head down on this table and then looks like he's about to murder him with his death hand. And these security guards or cops don't do anything about it. Like, no, they would shoot him on the spot. But because plot reasons, they're just like, oh, let's see how this works out.
Well, the better point about that is the minute when they go back in, the cop's like holding his gun. He's like, all right, Spider-Man, this is not how this works in the court of law. And then they just go, let this Kane guy talk.
And
he's got a scary mask.
The final page for this third part is he's turned himself in, and like I'm pretty sure you even see him like walk away with like some of the guards or whatever, or the bailiff. But then the next page, he's jumping out and he's going to kill Ben Reilly.
Yep.
And then actually, honestly, the covers on this arc are pretty strong overall because
there's really good covers throughout. Like I think this one would be my second favorite. So sorry to the carnage over the chair. I really like this cover.
Yeah, they're all fine. Would you guys agree with interior art that this is probably the best art in all four? Even over Bagley, I think I like this art better.
Which one? The
3.
Oh
3,
yeah.
Which I'm surprised to say, but I think it's pretty solid.
Yeah. I'd agree.
I don't know.
I thought you were talking about issue 4, and I was gonna
give
a little bit of respect.
Yeah. Moving into the fourth part, we have.
It would be your duty to argue with me if I'd said that.
We have Spectacular Spider-Man 226. This is pretty. I like this. Is an iconic cover, like I said, and the copy text on the cover teases that the one true Spider-Man will be revealed at last.
Which I thought we were over that. Like, I didn't think people still cared at this point which one was the real one. Like, we established, Peter's probably the real one. Let's just go with that. He doesn't even want to know.
Wow.
And I didn't want to know.
Well, clearly he was just in denial because he cares a lot at the end.
Yeah, a lot.
A lot. I mean, when he transforms into an entirely different character.
So this is the Tom DeFalco, Sal Buscema, Bill Sienkiewicz team. And on this podcast, especially Mike has noted that he hates this creative team. Mostly the art.
It's the art. and the writing is really, really wordy. But in fairness to Sienkiewicz and Buscema, they do draw my favorite Kane.
Mhm.
And so we pick up from last issue, and we were talking about how the security guards don't really do anything to Kane, and I don't think they have the ability to, because the first thing we see is Kane just shaking off 6 cops who have dogpiled him.
Use guns.
Yeah, and then the way it's finally resolved is Jacob Raven sneaks up and puts a gun to Kane's head, and so he has to turn himself in. And
preventing him from just hitting Jacob Raven.
Yeah. There's a funny moment where Ben has to thank Spider-Man for helping him pretend that he's Peter Parker. And then MJ says that she wants to kiss Spider-Man, even though she's supposed to be pretending that her husband is right next to her.
Oh no! The exact line is, "Oh, Spider-Man, I could just kiss you," and that's only the start of what's waiting for you back home. So she's directly implying that Spider-Man is coming back home.
Well, they put it in whispery dialogue. Yeah. It's supposed to be like a Shakespeare aside almost, where nobody else around them is supposed to hear that.
Okay, I had a really hard time seeing that then because my scan does not show up with like the whispery. It's like almost as bolded.
Well, and it's smaller, text, and it's pretty clearly a whisper.
Okay.
And then we get a bugle scene, which I don't think we got before in this arc. And this is a nice scene where Robbie, he announces the outcome of the case in the newsroom, and then Jonah's like, "Get back to work." And then he runs in his office and he's like, "Yes!"
Because the best one of the entire issue, easily.
Yeah, behind the scenes, Jameson has actually paid for Peter Parker's defense behind his back.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and there has been argument. There's been an ongoing argument between him and Robbie about to what extent and how to cover this story, because Jameson feels like at this point he's behind closed doors, like he likes Peter, and obviously Peter's an employee of the Bugle. So it's like, how do you report on that?
Especially with him funding the lawyers.
Conflict of interest.
Then Kane confesses and explains all of his murders, and he gets taken to Rikers. And
you guys have probably already talked about this in previous shows. I've got to ask you guys. I don't understand what Kane's like. I mean, we explain a lot of stuff with Kane, with just he's a crazy person, but I don't know why he has such a giant beef with Ben Reilly. Is it? It seems to just be you're not worthy of Peter.
Yeah.
And is that all it is? It's just you're not good enough to be Peter Parker, and so I hate you, and I'm gonna.
Basically.
It's that, and the fact that Ben has yet to show any symptoms of degeneration. So I think he's kind of jealous of that in a way.
Yeah.
Why doesn't he just murder him?
He tries.
He tries. But yeah, I guess even obviously we're going to get to it, but at the end of the story, there's a switch up on the clone situation. But at this point, Kane still thinks that Ben is a clone.
Because if he thinks Peter Parker is like the most important person on Earth because of how altruistic and good he is, the last thing on Earth I would think you would do is try to frame the guy who has the exact same fingerprints and DNA as the guy you're trying to. I'm sure you guys have talked about this already. That's insane. That's preposterous.
Yeah, I was just waiting for Peter to make like that totally logical reasoning, make that argument rather than like, oh, if you won't help me, I'll reveal my own identity.
No, it was like Kane even says it at some point. I don't know exactly where, but he says he was trying to frame Ben. But it just happened to work out that he framed Peter, and then they also happened to switch places.
Yeah, but when you come up, because that was 2 years ago, when you come up with that plan, you have to know there's a good chance that, and in fact, not just a good chance, there's a much less likelihood that somebody's gonna arrest Ben because Ben's on the run and no one knows who he is.
Yeah, especially because he shouldn't exist. Ben should not be a real person.
This is the worst framing idea ever. Like, why would you go to framing? It's the last time on Earth you'd go to framing.
Also, Kane also kind of establishes that he wants Peter to live his life, but how would Peter live his life if he's considered legally dead? Like, if people saw him get executed in the electric chair, and yet they also then see him on the street with his wife, how would people react to that? He would have to live in his house for the rest of his life. It wouldn't work. So Kane is just kind of an idiot.
Yeah, but it's kind of explained with he's just crazy person.
Yeah. And so Ben, MJ, and Pete, they all finally make it back home. And Pete makes the point that Ben is free now because Jacob Raven, Kane, they're not on to him anymore. So Ben can now do whatever he wants.
I just want to say that I loved the shot of Kane in the interview room, just like this giant man in this large, like overly complicated costume, just like sitting there going like, "Yeah, I killed her."
They would have taken his mask off. There's no way he would still be allowed to wear that mask. They'd be like, "Let's see who this guy is," and then he'd be like, "I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for you meddling kids." But
and the best part would be when they take his mask off and figure out that it's Peter Parker with a screwed up face.
And I get like comic book logic and stuff, but I have a hard time buying that Peter doesn't recognize his voice the entire time.
Yeah. I mean, you never know. He could be doing a Christian Bale Batman voice or something this entire time.
He could, but then to make sure the audience knows that you put something different in the dialogue balloon, right? You bold it or you spawn bold it or something.
When Ben and MJ get back to MJ and Peter's place, Ben gets dangerously close to kissing her on the mouth. Like, very close. He even said, he kind of like whispers it even because the text is really small. He's like, "I envy Peter."
They just do that. I mean, that is some like Arrow Smallville storytelling, right? Like that's there so that later on we might buy more when Peter loses his mind and is afraid that Ben Reilly's going to actually take his life. So like we have a token moment. There's I'm assuming, guys, because I haven't read everything up to this, I'm assuming there's not a lot of points before that where MJ seems to be kind of maybe interested in Ben Reilly and there's sort of a love triangle. That's like the only moment of that, I'm sure, that there is. And it's very strategically placed 3 pages before that happens.
Yeah, so they then get a call from Seward Trainer, Ben Reilly's scientist buddy, who has been testing MJ's fetus, and we learn that the baby is fine, but genetic drift something.
Genetic drift.
Which I think genetic drift is a real thing, but it totally is not whatever Seward Trainer is trying to imply. And so it turns out Peter might be a clone, so they should test him. And in an arc earlier, Jackal teased that maybe they're both clones. Maybe everyone's a clone. And Pete, before he even getting tested, he's freaking out. He suddenly thinks that Ben and Trainer are trying to scam him and MJ.
Yeah. He thinks like this whole time Ben's his friend and he hates that Ben's having to go on trial. He turns into an entirely different, he just completely loses his mind, which I don't buy at all.
He reverts to like where he was at like 20 issues ago.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure Ben even established in an earlier issue that if it turns out he's a real one, he doesn't care because Peter already built this life with MJ, so he's not going to interfere with that.
Exactly. Even when it's revealed, like, your lived experiences are still your own. Like, even if you're not the real one and the past 5 years or whatever are different, Pete is still the one who got married to MJ. And based on the timeline, like, Pete hardly had any experience, or whoever the real one was, they hadn't really been like seriously dating MJ before the switch. So it's like there's really nothing like crazy.
No, I don't know if any of you guys are TNG fans, but it's a Will Riker, Thomas Riker situation. Like they're diverted for enough years that they're completely different people, and that's interesting. But that's why I don't understand why they put their tail between their legs. Marvel editorial, and seem to be really concerned that people wouldn't accept that Peter Parker was actually. I think that's really interesting. I've never understood why you didn't just run with that.
Yeah. But MJ convinces him, and we get a science montage page of them doing testing.
It's great.
Especially with the exclamation points.
Yeah, I thought this was hilarious because it's like, this is not thrilling watching them.
Compared, contrasted, analyzed.
Yeah, analyzed! Exclamation point.
But the results are in. Peter is the clone and Ben is the original. Mm-hmm. And MJ freaks out about her baby for a panel, which also doesn't make sense because we've just established that there's literally nothing wrong with the baby. So Peter being a clone or not doesn't impact that.
They try to tie this into the whole trial thing because the word trial is still on the cover, even though we got out of a trial. So you have that panel with Mary Jane. Once again, Peter Parker is on trial for his life and the lives of those he loves. And this time a final verdict. No.
Because none of that is true, or it shouldn't be, but then it kind of becomes true when neither Ben nor Peter act like themselves when they find out the results.
Yeah, Pete pulls a complete 180 in character, and he just like jumps at Ben. And this is like one of the panels where Sienkiewicz's art actually totally works because he just makes Peter look like this freaking animal.
Yeah.
Cool.
And he charges at Ben. And it even though, like, as I just said, like, we've already established that it's irrelevant whether you're a clone or not. Like, that has been Ben's arc the past few arcs.
Well, I feel like just reading this by itself, you get to that and you're like, I don't understand why it's that big of a deal to him that he's actually a clone. Or rather, I get why it would maybe bother you, but you wouldn't suddenly get paranoid, and so, especially when we make this big of a deal out of Peter Parker's humanity. He would be the last guy that would lose it like that.
Yeah.
They try to treat it like this whole time he's been paranoid about it or something.
But it's not just Peter, because then Ben like actually plays into it and starts fighting back.
Yeah.
Where, like, that's also out of character. Ben should be like, hey, calm down. I don't really care whether I'm the real one. Like, your life is still your life. But then we get a moment in this issue where MJ tries to break it up, and then Pete hits her Hank Pym style.
Yep, Hank Pym style.
And it's clearly like a kind of backhand shove.
That's great.
The moment. And
no, he punches her like he
launches her across the room.
He splats her.
He splats her.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is
it's not even a backhand. His hand is balled up, fit when he does it. And
you see later, he hit her so hard that she's bleeding. Yeah, she has blood gushing out of her nose.
And she's just like, please don't leave, Peter.
And then he runs away.
To the hospital, and I might have a brain aneurysm, but come back.
Yeah, and Pete's a menace, so he runs away. He's the worst.
But I thought it was actually crazy because the comparison is actually really close, where it is very similar to like that Hank Pym moment where Jim Shooter, like, very clearly, like, in the script and even like in the writing, you can tell he didn't want Hank Pym to punch Janet in the face. But Bob Hall, who at that point was somewhat new to the industry, he didn't know how to convey it with his art. And I feel like it's a similar situation here. Like, I don't think they actually wanted Peter to like directly hit her, but that's totally the way it comes off in the art.
I did not hit her. I did not.
Hi, Ben.
I did not. Oh, hi.
And apparently Marvel actually got some heat for this moment.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah.
And once again, McFarlane influence, man. I don't know that happens And I don't know that these stories are this insanely melodramatic if one of the highest selling Spider-Man, or at that point, the highest selling Spider-Man book of all time hadn't been done by McFarlane, which you can't make heads or tails of any better than you can Spawn.
Yeah. And so that's pretty much the end for the Spider-Man stuff, but then we get the tease for the upcoming stuff. We cut back to Jackal, and he's finishing up his carrion virus because he wants to turn everyone into a clone. And we see our third clone, or maybe he's the fourth clone now, since we have fully revealed Kane.
He's like the fourth clone because the other one, the other one melted.
No, this is the melted one. This is the one that went giant and like turned into a kaiju earlier.
It was a kaiju clone?
What?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this one has like weird shape altering powers and turned 20 feet tall.
He has those powers, and yet he's still so convinced that he's the real Peter Parker. It's amazing because he's we have another person on this podcast named Matt, and this is his favorite character because he's so ridiculous. Like, even compared to Jack, he's just a ridiculous character who...
Jack was family fun.
Yeah, he's so obviously a clone, but he believes that he's Peter Parker and that the Jackal has implanted these weird thoughts in his head, like, or it made him so that he can have these powers. And he has to kill Ben and Peter in order to become the real Peter Parker again.
And
that's what Peter Parker would do, naturally. I'll prove I'm Peter Parker by murdering people, even though I'm clearly too short to be Peter Parker.
And so the Jackal has also made him a costume so he can play dress up. But most importantly, I thought this was hilarious. The Jackal is literally like, I need you to make an errand for me. I need you to go on a shopping trip. He needs to buy the Jackal makes a joke of it and says like that he needs to buy oregano.
He needs vanilla extract and oregano and a highly experimental isotope. And naturally, you can get all of those things at the same place. You know, in 1985, you could probably get all those things at your local corner drugstore. But here in 1955, it's a little hard to come by.
Yeah. So that'll be the next thing. The next episode will be covering maximum clonage. Which
I have all those too, by the way.
Hopefully should be at least half as ridiculous as it sounds. Including we're teased that this clone's errand run is in a New Warriors issue, so we'll get back to New Warriors.
Not looking forward to that.
It's bad.
Yep, so that is our next episode. I'd like to thank Captain Logan for joining us again. And do you have any final things you want to plug again?
Well, first of all, I totally forgot. I know you guys always do the sponsor. I totally forgot to do the sponsor at the beginning of the show. So the sponsor for the show this week is X-Men Chef Boyardee. That's the sponsor, X-Men Chef Boyardee, and also Geekvolution, and 20 like 3-year-old Chef Boyardee. And Geekvolution is also a sponsor. We do 5 days of content every week. We do a giant, insane mega show that takes us about 8 hours to record. About the time that you would usually spend flipping burgers at McDonald's is how long it takes us to shoot at Geekvolution Omnibus. And we do all of our off-the-cuff content on that show, including on new movie reviews and comic reviews, et cetera, et cetera. And then we put those on the channel all through the week, split up in different segments, so you can watch those either way. But my main show is Superhero Rewind, which is written in-depth analysis on every superhero movie ever made. We finally have brought it back to weekly. We'll see if I can keep up with that kind of pacing. But that's what we've been doing for the last month, and that is available on YouTube and also in podcast form on iTunes and anywhere where you can download a podcast. So check us out, folks.
All right, awesome. Yeah, check them out. I'll definitely make sure to link in the description and all that.
Thanks, dude.
Hey, thanks once again. Thanks for stopping by, because I remember when Eric first linked your channel in one of his, back when he still did videos on his own channel, and so been a fan a long time. It's really great for you to take the time and be on our show.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, that means you've been around for a long time, and I mean, I know your username. You've been with us for years and years.
So yeah, just don't comment as much anymore, just because college happened. But
we're all getting old, man.
We're
getting old now, and I can't believe how old this stuff is now.
Yep. All right. We'd also love to have you back at some point if you're interested, but we can talk about that offline.
I would love to, absolutely.
All right.
I wouldn't blame you if you didn't want to come back.
I don't know how Billy's making it. I'm worried for that guy. I don't know if you guys realize what you've done to his psyche, but I feel like I can tell there's a possibility of a cane direction in the future for Billy. I'm worried for him.
The thing is, me and Vince are just about to graduate, and Billy's still a freshman, so I'm assuming this is going to affect his grades somehow.
He's going to think back on all these Clone Saga reviews, and he's going to be singing that 90s song, "We Were Only Freshmen."
All right, so thanks for watching, and tune in next week to see further developments of Billy's psyche. All right, peace.